All right, let's jump right into this explainer. I want you to take a second and just imagine something for me. You are finally alone. You've driven miles and miles away from the city, away from everyone, and you're settling into this quiet, completely isolated cabin. The only sound is the wind rustling through the trees. You think you're perfectly safe, but then this chilling realization suddenly washes over you. You're not alone. Someone is watching you from the shadows. Now that spine-tingling scenario, it isn't just a campfire tale. Stick around because today we're breaking down 3 absolutely terrifying true stories that are definitely going to make you want to double-check your locks tonight.
We all kind of love the idea of a cabin getaway, right? I mean, the expectation is pretty universal. Just you, some fresh air, and total uninterrupted peace and quiet. But for the people in the stories we're exploring today, that so-called peace quickly morphed into literal living nightmares. Because when you really strip away that romanticized idea of solitude, what you're actually left with is deep isolation. You are entirely vulnerable out there. And the reality for these individuals involved supposed friends hiding incredibly dark secrets, strangers showing up in business suits where they absolutely do not belong, and, well, things hiding in the attic that definitely aren't raccoons.
So let's see how this all builds, starting with escalation 1, the invited threat. This is the story of Stacy, Randy, and the fake girlfriend.
What makes this first scenario so uniquely terrifying is that the danger wasn't lurking out in the woods somewhere. It was invited right through the front door. The story starts with a couple, Stacy and her boyfriend, who had planned a super relaxing trip with their really good friend Randy. Now, right before the trip kicks off, Randy goes through a pretty rough breakup. But, to their surprise, he shows up for the getaway with a brand new girlfriend named Lucy. At first glance, Lucy just seems, quiet and reserved. But let's look at this timeline of Lucy's escalating behavior, because the red flags just keep piling up. It starts in the evening. They're all sitting around playing a simple game of Uno. A totally mundane activity we've all done, right? Well, suddenly, Lucy just explodes. She starts screaming that Stacy is cheating, throwing a literal toddler-level tantrum over a card game. Massive red flag. Fast forward a bit to dinner. The tension in the room is already super thick, and Lucy begins oversharing way too many deeply personal details about her and Randy at the dinner table, just making everyone incredibly uncomfortable. But the real horror? That arrives at 3 a.m. Randy wakes up in the pitch black. He looks down, and there is Lucy, just standing at the foot of the bed, staring at him. When a completely terrified Randy asks what she's doing, she just shrugs and casually says she's, quote, watching him sleep, which brings us to the morning. Randy is packing up, thoroughly spooked, and he finds a huge knife hidden in her bag, the exact same knife he had seen her holding in the kitchen the night before. Yeah, they packed their bags and left that cabin immediately. Obviously, Randy rightfully ghosted her the very second they were safely back in town. But when he actually tried to look into who he had just brought into the woods with his best friends, he found out that Lucy didn't even exist. No social media, no public records, absolutely nothing. It was as if she was using a completely fake name, embedding herself into their group and actively looking for her next victim.
If you thought having the threat invited inside was creepy, let's look at what happens when the isolation of the woods turns against you. We're moving on to escalation 2, the perimeter threat. This is the deeply unsettling story of Victor and the stranger in the woods.
Just picture this setting for a second. It's around 11 p.m. Victor, who's a guy that actively seeks out these secluded cabins to decompress from a severe anxiety, is entirely alone, wrapped in the pitch-dark woods. Suddenly, there is a knock at the door. He peers out the window, and what does he see? A man standing out in the middle of the woods wearing a full, formal business suit. I mean, the guy looks utterly, completely out of place. His hair is perfectly slicked back, he's clean-shaven, he looks like he's prepped for a corporate board meeting, not a midnight hike through the wilderness. Through the locked door, the man claims he's lost his girlfriend and desperately needs to come inside, but there is a massive, terrifying problem here. His voice is completely flat. There's zero emotion, zero panic, absolutely nothing that indicates a man desperately searching for a loved one in the dark.
So Victor, thankfully trusting his gut, flat out refuses to let this bizarre stranger inside. And that is exactly when the polite facade drops. The man starts aggressively, violently pounding on the door. Victor is panicking now, screaming at the man to leave, but the stranger doesn't leave. He stops pounding and just starts laughing. He steps up, presses his face right against the glass of the window, and in that exact same flat, dead voice, he says, "Come on, Victor, just open the door already." The stranger knew his name. Out in the middle of nowhere, miles from civilization, this man knew exactly who was inside that cabin.
Victor immediately calls 911. He's absolutely terrified. By the time the police finally navigate out to the secluded property, the suited man has already vanished into the trees. But here is the stark horror of the whole situation. When the officer went to check the perimeter of the cabin, they made a really chilling discovery. All of Victor's car tires had been slashed. Victor hadn't just been visited by a weird stranger. He had been intentionally trapped there, isolated in the dark with that man. And to this day, Victor has absolutely no idea who that suited man was or how he could have possibly known his name. Okay, we've seen threats invited in and threats lurking just outside. Let's move to our final, and honestly, most invasive story today. Escalation 3, the internal threat. The inherited cabin and the breathing blanket. I gotta warn you, this story hits much, much closer to home. It involves a man who recently inherited his late father's extremely old, really messy cabin. When he first walks in, he is immediately hit with this horrific smell of death inside. Absolutely foul. But you know how our brains try to protect us? He just rationalizes it all away. He figures, hey, it's just old trash from his dad, or maybe a dead squirrel stuck in the walls. So he spends the entire day cleaning the place up. But he keeps noticing that the attic door keeps mysteriously falling open on its own. When he finally peeks up there, he finds fresh snack wrappers and empty beer cans scattered all around. But again, he rationalizes it. He assumes his late dad was just a bit of a slob leaving garbage behind. He completely ignores the blaring alarms his environment is basically screaming at him. Which leads us to nightfall. The visceral horror of this night unfolds so slowly, and the realization is literally paralyzing. Let's walk through it. Step 1. He's exhausted from cleaning all day, so he's just sitting in the quiet living room under a single dim lamp. Step 2. He casually glances over to the corner of the room, and he notices a strange, crumpled blanket lying on the floor near an old recliner. A blanket he definitively does not remember seeing there earlier. Step 3. He squints in the low light, and suddenly, he sees the tip of a heavy work boot sticking out from underneath the fabric. Step 4. He freezes, and he just watches as that blanket slowly begins to move. Up and down. Up and down, perfectly matching the slow, steady rhythm of someone breathing. The threat wasn't outside. It was sitting right there in the living room with him. Just let that sink in for a second. Someone had been secretly living up in that attic for over a year. And that night, while he was sitting there, they had quietly climbed down and were just resting in the dark with him. The absolute second he realized what he was looking at, the man did not hesitate. He bolted. He sprinted out the front door and straight to his car. As he's peeling out of the driveway, he looks in his rearview mirror and sees this mangy, terrifying-looking man run out of the cabin right behind him. He sold the entire property as is the very next day. Never, ever went back. Honestly, pulling the research together for this explainer really hammers home one incredibly terrifying truth. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing about the wilderness isn't the bears, or the wolves, or the elements. It's the people hiding it. Whether it's an imposter hunting a friend group, a suited man trapping you in the dark, or a squatter literally breathing in the corner of your living room. So I have to ask you, which of these stories creeped you out the most? Let me know. And maybe, just maybe, you'll think twice before booking that lonely, secluded cabin for your next getaway. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next explainer.